welcome to my channel. With this pandemic going around, many of us have shortened work hours, or even some of us have gotten our jobs cut altogether. Kind of thankfully, I'm kind of in the first category where my hours were just kind of cut short now. I'm kind of less than part-time right now, but hey. But anyway, with so much free time, one thing it allows for all of us to do is catch up on some reading. And boy, did I. It took me 2 months to, well, a little over about 2.5 months actually to get through it all. But I have finally went and read the Harry Potter series from J.K. Rowling. And it had been sitting in my house for a little while, but I never really got around to reading it. And it's one of those things, out of sight, out of mind. It was sitting in a corner, but then I discovered it again recently when I was trying to find something to act as weights to weight down the diamond painting project that I did earlier on, and that I still need to get a frame for. But you know, I was just looking and I saw some. It's like instant weight, of course. As you can see, these are big books, but and I must say that despite the size of these, it really kept me totally engaged. It's you know, it's kind of hard to do sometimes. A lot of people tell me that they couldn't get through the whole Harry Potter series, or they never even attempted it because of the fact that, well, they are big. Like, take for instance this one, which is easy out. This is the final book. Thick. Almost, not quite dictionary thick, but almost. But it is, you know, so they're big books. They can be intimidating to those who are not avid readers, or they may not have the time to invest in one big story. But you know, I made it through, and I could not put the books down. And it's like, I could see why now, for that the whole reason why has been such hype around the whole Harry Potter universe for the past 20 years or so. And I definitely see the hype now. But I mean, I've watched the movies before, so I mean, that wasn't a problem. It's like, I knew of them, and it's like, I think everybody by now has probably at least heard of Harry Potter. I mean, if not, what rock have you been under for the past 20 years? But, you know, but you don't necessarily have to have watched it to know about it. You've probably heard it, you know, in school, or, you know, from kids. But this isn't a children's book now. It's let's get that straight. It's not for small children. It's for your, I would probably say about 10 and up. The first one's not so dark, but as the books progress, they do get a little bit darker. More in the realm of, say, maybe teenager. So I would say, not for like little 5-year-olds, but let them watch the movie. The movies, those are abridged versions, but which that's also something that surprised me a little bit. And I did actually go back and read the movies. I went back and watched the movies after reading all of these, just for the heck of it. And granted, I do find myself doing the whole, that didn't happen that way, or this happened a different way, or they left that out completely. I do find myself doing that, as a habit. But you really don't need to read the books to appreciate and love the movies, and vice versa. Originally, I just knew of it from the movies, but if you really feel adventurous, I would definitely suggest reading the series, actually reading the books. They they go so much more in depth than the movies, and there's a lot of stuff in these books that I do wish they would have left into the movies, but having made TV myself before, I and also with as many behind the scenes stuff as I've watched throughout my life, I can understand why they have to cut stuff out. It's usually budgetary constraints or time constraints. A lot of times, time. I mean, if you try to, well, they did cut this Deathly Hallows. They did make that into 2 movies actually, part 1 and part 2, but they still cut out a lot out of it. But most of these books, save for perhaps the first one, The Sorcerer's Stone, all these books probably would have made, if they kept everything in, it probably would have been like maybe 4 or 5 hour movies, maybe even longer. And even the most eager of film fans, don't have the stamina to sit through a 4, 5, 6 hour movie. That's why they always try to keep it down to, 2.5 hours usually. Sometimes you might get some that are 3 or 4, but those are rare. They usually do try to keep it to, 2.5 hours most of the time. But and for those of you who might not be familiar with the story, it's basically a young boy. He's an orphan. He's raised by his crappy aunt and uncle. Very, very mean guys. And they didn't really care that much for him because, well, they didn't care that much. They weren't the magic type people. They didn't like anything to do with magic. They were like, straight laced as they come. And of course, Harry Potter's parents were wizards. So, but they had died, so the aunt and uncle had to raise him, but they didn't want him to know anything about the magic or anything. They told him lies about how he died, how they died and all that. But then, by the time he was 11 years old, he gets, word from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry that, hey, it's time to go to school now. You're accepted. So that's where the adventure begins. So that was, and then the books, they do kind of get, each one gets progressively longer and a little bit more darker with the tones. But basically, this young wizard is going to wizarding school and is going through all these various adventures, which all get included into this one even bigger adventure. There's actually a few different layers to the story. And so yeah, so it's very involving. And I can see why some people would say, okay, I'm just going to stick with the movies. Which, like I say, that's fine too. I love the movies. That was what it actually inspired me to read the books in the first place. I like sometimes to do that, and it also helps when a book doesn't take away too much movie doesn't take away too much from a book, I should say, because since it was a book first and then a movie, sometimes it's the other way around. But, usually, sometimes you get some movies, they totally veer away from the original source, and it's like, you might as well just slap a different title on it. But then there's other movies that actually hold true to the story, and they take out some stuff that they think that, people aren't going to miss, or it's not going to derail the story at all, which Harry Potter does that. Sure, there are some scenes that are not in there that, like I say, I think should, but then there's others that, I could see why, for instance, the whole part with Hermione Granger and the house elves, that part didn't really need to be in the movies, so they did leave that out, and I think that would have probably been a big budget nightmare there with since the house elves and that were CGI. The house elves would be the Dobby character if you're familiar with the Harry Potter. It's Dobby. There's actually other house elves in the books, and there's a whole story in there about Hermione's going on a little crusade to get kind of like unionize the house elves. So, but they left that out in the movies, which that's fine. That's really not that significant to the story. But then there's like some other parts that some characters that should have had a little bit of a bigger role. Like for instance, Sirius Black, who spoiler alert on a 20-year-old story. The Prisoner of Azkaban, aka Sirius Black, is Harry's godfather. So of course, once the events of Prisoner of Azkaban, once that all that stuff happened, this character is in Harry Potter's life a lot more than what the movies would have you believe. And he's actually a very important part of Harry's life while he's going through the school and having these challenges come to him. And if you read the book or watch the movies, you'll know what challenges I'm talking about. But yes, there's an evil wizard is at play throughout the whole series, and of course he's setting things up to try to kill Harry Potter, and that's the big overarching theme is this big bad wizard who killed his parents but he could not kill Harry for some reason. He couldn't figure it out why. Why couldn't he kill him when he was a baby? But it didn't happen. He was the only one that's ever survived that curse. So the big bad guy, Lord Voldemort's after him. And that's the big overarching adventure that all these other little adventures make up. Like I say, layers. And so, yes, Sirius Black was a major part, major help for Harry up until, of course, his death. The character did die in one of the books. I'm not going to tell you which one, but if you've watched the movies, you know. Or if you've read the books, you know. But, then there was like another character that I think they should have fleshed out more in the movies that they did in the book. And that was Professor Snape. The movies make the man look like straight out villain, total, total what. But really, in the books, he's more of a sympathetic character. He's not outright evil for evil's sake, or he's not being a total dick to Harry, just for no apparent reason other than he reminds him of his father. There is a whole underlying thing there with him, why he's doing that. And if you know anything about bullying, that is the reason why Snape is the way he is. It's like he was actually bullied when he was younger, so of course he's projecting it. And that comes out in the book a lot better, than in the movies. The movies doesn't really, they do show a little bit about how he was bullied, mainly by Harry's father, but it doesn't really go into detail. But you understand him more if you read the books. I'm not saying everything he did was still right. He still did quite a few things wrong, but he's more of a character of pity than hate. But you really feel sorry for the guy, and which I did. But anyway, I would totally suggest reading the series. Don't try muscling through it muscling through the whole series all at once, because unless you are an avid reader and you're like me, where it's like you can read one book after another, spending all the time reading it. But I would suggest not doing that if you're just more of the casual reader. That way you don't really get burnt out and bored. Because not saying that the story's boring. The story's really exciting, but some people, if they're just, reading long books, it's like 7 books here. You're gonna read them all, and it's like, takes a lot of time. So, I think what I was doing, after a while when work started picking back up for me again, I was just reading a chapter or two before bed. But yeah, it's highly recommended, the Harry Potter series. And if you haven't seen them yet either, watch the movies.